Hello, everyone. We have quite a few already online. We will wait till about 8:30 to get started. I just am checking right now to make sure everyone can see the screen and you can hear me. So over on if you look on your right-hand side, I believe it should be on your right hand, raise your hand if you can hear me and you can see the screen. Okay, Janine. Hey, I see some of you. I think some of you might be having trouble finding it, or maybe you're just not there yet. So, okay, at least I've got a couple of you. That's fine. No one else has to do it. I know that at least you're hearing. And we also made sure that everyone had to call in. So when we do discussion and all that, we're sure that everyone will be able to hear each other. So we're just going to wait a few more minutes and we'll get started. Okay, everyone, we're going to get started. We have about 30 people that will be checking in. We have more than half of you already on, so we'll get started. So let me give you the lay of the land. This is a very interactive webinar. So there's going to be polls that you will be asked to take. I will break in. You're all on mute right now. But when we have discussions, I will unmute you so that you can answer. Everyone will be able to hear each other, and then I'll mute you back. Obviously, we can't have everyone unmuted or we would have too much background noise. So I think we should be fine that way. And the first part of the webinar is going to be very much some quick hits on time management. And then the second half of the seminar, we'll actually get into some real tools. And at the end of the seminar, you will get some downloads. There's going to be about, I think, 8 different downloads that you can get. You can also go to the website and get these. And there will also be a recording of the webinar. So you should be set after the webinar to share this with anyone you would like to share it with. Anytime as we go through this, if you have a question, again, raise your hand. Some of you did that for me when we were just checking to make sure everything was okay. So with that, we're going to get started. As I said, we have over 30 people registered for this, and I know I think right now we have over 22 on the line, so that's great. That's already a great response. So time management, how to completely save your day. When we are finished with this, we are hoping that you will each have a minimum of 2 specific things that you can implement as soon as you get off the phone or off the webinar. We do know that if you try to do more than 2, generally that you probably won't get anything implemented. So keep that in mind as we go through. Okay, our goal today is to challenge the way you think about time management, and this has kind of become our standard slide for all of our webinars. We really do want to pull you out of your box a little bit, make you think a little differently, obviously add some value, and also make sure that you implement actions. Wouldn't be a good coach if we're not pushing you a little bit, but I think you also have a little fun with this also. So the first poll that we have here is a quick poll on who you are. So if you could each click on the poll should be open. All you have to do is click on it, and I'll start seeing you voting. So just click on the screen of which, whether you represent a business owner, CEO, executive management, etc. Okay, I don't see anyone. Okay, there we go. Okay, so it looks like we're still collecting a few responses, and it looks like we have 36% business owners, 36% executive teams, 14% HR management. This is a good split, 7% CEO and presidents, and 7% other. So that's very helpful for me, simply because I know how to then kind of structure some of the comments and some of the discussions that we'll have. This is designed for business owners, executive management, higher level executives in an organization, but it can be taken down to just about anyone that you would want to. But some of this, I think, is more appropriate for those of us that are in the higher ranks a little bit. So as we move forward. Okay, so let's get started. We have another poll. And by the way, there's a little stickiness here, so I apologize for some of the delays in these slides. I want you to write on a piece of paper or anything in front of you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied you are with the way you manage your time. And then click on the numbers below on where you fall. And the poll should be open. Take a little time on this. All right. Okay, it's still clicking through a little bit. Okay, I think we have just about everyone. Okay, here's how it fell out. This is great. 7% of you are under 3. 38% of you are between 4 and 5. 38% of you are between 6 and 7. 13% of you are at 8 and 9. And we didn't have anyone at 10. I was hoping we'd have a couple 10 so we could call on you during the sessions. But anyway, that's a really, really good split. And hopefully after the seminar and you implement some of these things, you can all get yourself up into that 6, 7, 8, and 9 category. Okay, moving on. Our purpose today is to really get some time back for you. We also want to give you some quick and easy tips and approaches that you can implement immediately. There are some very, very good quick hits in here that I think when you get off the phone, you're going to say, oh, this works great. We're also going to give you some real tools. We're calling it our time management toolbox. And it's really about helping you break some of the bad habits we have around time management. We want to get you started. We want to sustain that start. And we want to have a fun, fast-paced learning and coaching session. Okay, so first question is, why is time management so difficult? And I am going to call on you on this question. So we have a Carol Cannon. Carol, why is time management so difficult for you to manage?
I think because I always want to do different things beyond my normal schedule.
Okay. Do you like to multitask a lot?
I wish I could multitask, but I'm not as good at doing that anymore. And I would rather stay focused. I'd like to learn how to stay focused.
Okay, great. We're going to give you some definitely good things to stay focused. Beverly Taylor, I'm muting you. How about you? Why is it so difficult for you to manage time?
Generally, I come in the morning and I have my tasks I want to complete, and then they get interrupted by a lot of other things.
Ah, so you have to start handling whatever flying at you.
Correct.
correct? Okay. All right. Well, I think as we move into all of these items, we're going to give you definitely some help here and helping you stay focused and also try to manage out some of what I call that reactive time management, where all you're doing is reacting to what's flying at you at the moment. Okay, first of all, I have to state there is no silver bullet to time management. I wish I could just say, you know, wiggle my nose and bam, everyone gets all their time back. But there is no silver bullet. It really does require you sitting down and implementing some either new habits or just a few different approaches that I think you would get some time back. But most important is to understand that it doesn't happen automatically. Also, it requires two things. As we know, to get that little ball in that hole requires a whole lot of skill and a whole lot of mindset. And time management is as much mindset driven as it is skill driven. So please keep that in mind, because we will be going through some of these approaches, and it's really going to require you to change your mind. It's going to require you to maybe get out of your comfort zone a little bit and implement some things that you haven't thought about. So what are the skills and what are the mindset? We are going to focus on how to help you get focused more. There is a whole lot of discipline involved with this. As with golf or any other game, there's also practice. You have to have a little patience and a little determination. But I think with some of the items we're going to give you, we're also going to help you build your skill around this. So the first and the easiest step for you is to actually identify what your time wasters are. A study recently found that workers use only 60% of their available work time. That means they are only productive about 3 out of 5 days. Now, all of you CEOs and owners of businesses out there, imagine that you're losing 2 days from every worker out there just because of not managing time wasters and just not being focused and being productive. So the first step is actually understanding what your time wasters are. So up here is the top 20 time wasters, and I also put in here something about your DISC profile. The DISC profile, I know many of you on the phone that are my clients and that know about the DISC, but it's actually a behavioral assessment, and it helps you understand kind of your behavior and how you like to do things. So the items in parentheses is actually telling you if this would be, if you are a D on the DISC or an I on the DISC, it's telling you that this could be one of your problem areas. For those of you that aren't as familiar with the DISC, you can basically ignore those, but I think a lot of you are. I'm also offering the DISC at the end as one of the coaching items that you can take advantage of if you haven't done that. So take a look at this, and I want you to just try to determine which of the top 2 or 3 are your problems. And I'm going to unmute the screen a little bit and get some answers on this. Betsy, are you on the phone? Betsy?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Out of this list, what do you consider your top 2 time wasters?
Yeah, I could really put all of the above, but
okay.
Number 4 is a big one for me.
Okay.
And I get a lot of drop-in visitors.
Okay. Drop-in visitors
we'll call them.
Okay, great. And I think any of us that spend time in the office, or a lot of time in the office where you have a fairly full office, managing the drop-in visitors can be an issue. We'll give you some ideas around that. Let me go to someone else here. Jill Kearney, are you on the line? Hello?
Hello.
Hi,
This
Jill.
is Jill.
How are you?
I'm good,
Okay.
Michelle.
What are you?
I think my biggest frustration is telephone and email interruptions. But email in particular, especially if we're doing things, if I'm doing work on the computer, then the screens are open, and as emails come through and things like that, sometimes I get notifications or dings, or I've tried to turn some of those things off, but it's hard to see. You know, you start to see and you go, I can answer this quickly, but sometimes I think it's interrupting other flow.
Okay, super. I mean, I continually put up email and I teach this and I try, and it's still very, very hard for me not to look. However, some of it is a mindset. So I really want to get back to someone immediately, and I have finally resigned myself that I can go 2 hours without answering an email, and it's probably okay, unless I'm expecting something from a client and it's an emergency. But we'll also go into how to manage that a little bit better. So each of you are going to have different. Pardon? Go ahead.
No, I said good. I'm glad we're going to address that.
Okay, good. Okay, so as we move forward, here is some rituals that you want to start with that are just going to help you start managing some of those top 20, but also really get you started in a very focused way. And I guarantee you, some of you will say you do this, but I'm saying do this almost into a habit of this. First thing every morning, when you sit down at your desk, or maybe when you pop out of bed, ask what will make this the most successful day and make you feel productive at the end of it. Write it down and start there. We all probably have task lists or to-do lists, but actually ask that question in the middle of the day. Number one, it gets you focused. Number two, it forces you to think through, okay, what do I have on the agenda for today? But what's going to make you feel most successful and most productive is where you want to start. Obviously, if you have meetings and all of that, you may not be able to immediately get into a task, but very important, make this a ritual. And then during the day, we all have meetings, and I get most complaints about meetings and just interruptions. So before every call, every meeting, or any major activity, ask this question: what results do I want from this call, meeting, or activity? And write it down. And at the end of it, and I'm actually talking maybe 1 minute it would take you to do this. Because if you go into the meeting very focused on what the results you want, I guarantee that meeting is going to be a lot more focused, because you're going to focus that meeting and help make sure you get the results you need. And after the meeting, then determine if the results were achieved, and if not, why not? And then at the end of the day, review the day and ask yourself, what did you achieve and what could you have done better? All three of these together in terms of a ritual will take you less than 5 minutes. Also, at the end of the day, do not end that day without having your to-do list and your priorities out and ready for the next day. One of the things we're not going to talk a great deal about on here is some of the new technologies, simply because, whether you have an Android phone or whether you have an Apple phone, but there's apps out there for to-do lists, there's apps out there for priorities, there's apps out there for you to manage almost anything. The key is to find something that works for you. I will say 90% of the time, this is one thing, I never end the day without planning my next day, going through the to-do list, and actually prioritizing those tasks. This ritual can make a big difference for you. So that's a first quick hit for you. Okay, a next quick hit is learn to focus and then refocus. So you have to ignore emails. Set a time for handling the emails. I'm going to be honest with you, that doesn't work for me. What has most worked for me is where I just tell myself, okay, I'm going to give myself a 1 hour for not answering emails. And then that forces me to actually work against that as a goal. That is the thing that works the best for me. And I do turn off everything so I don't see those emails creeping in, because if I see them, I go directly to them. Do not multitask. Many people, and I think I'm a great multitasker, but every study that's out there has indicated that multitasking is not productive. Because every time you move from one thing to another thing, it's going to take you anywhere from 1 minute to 10 minutes to get back into the groove of doing what you were doing before. So especially if you're in the office, do not keep jumping from one thing to another, especially if you have a project that you're trying to get out the door, or that's going to require you to think through. Don't multitask, just put it on your thing. And I'm going to talk about the Pomodoro method that actually works really well to help you with this. Also, if you have a messy office and you're spending time looking for things, before, put this on your list of the first thing to get to do when you get off the phone. Get organized. Your space, your desk, and you. If you're spending more than every time you have to go look for something and you're spending time going through papers to find it, it means you're unorganized. Getting organized will definitely save you time. And then I love this one. Just think about when you're ready to go on vacation. You get 90% of what you have to get done, and you do it generally in a day and a half, so that you're sure that when you get out of here, all your priorities are clear. So whatever your deadline is, set it and then cut that by 20%. The vacation rule always makes you cut those deadlines, and act like you're leaving on vacation in 2 days. So what must you get done? If you're actually having trouble prioritizing, this helps you get out of it. Just say, I have to leave in 2 days and I'm not going to be back for 3. What do I absolutely have to get done? You're going to be amazed at what pops out and becomes very bright and shiny. Now, the other thing is beware of the shiny objects. We all have things that we like to do, we love to do, and we like to play with them. If you do that, actually set aside some time to actually do that. Most of us are going to do things that we like to do before things that we don't like to do. So keep that in mind. If there's certain things you like to do, and this might be, hey, I want to go online and do some research, even though it's not important that I do that right now. Set time each week to make sure you give yourself time to play with the shiny objects, the things you like to do. Just give yourself the time to do it. And that's the only time then you play with them. So here's a couple other quick hit approaches for you. Now, this is the one I love the best. It's called the Pomodoro technique. It is for extreme focus. And that is actually set your timer. I always use I just use my phone. And this is like if I'm doing a client project or I'm doing follow-up, or I know, look, this is going to take me an hour. I need to get focused so that it doesn't end up taking me 2.5 hours. So what I do is I set the timer for 25 minutes. And it forces me, your mindset immediately says, okay, I can do anything for 25 minutes. You stay very, very focused. When the alarm goes off, you can stand up, maybe, just stand up, do a couple deep V bends, sit down and do it again. I will guarantee you, if you do this 3 times, you will have been extraordinarily productive. Now, again, this is for things where this is going to take me over an hour. Sometimes I might have a 3-hour project. I have found that I can go more than 3 times, but after the 3rd time, the recommendation, and this is all based on what human beings need kind of in terms of breaks, you can go you can take a longer break, 15 or 30 minutes. Maybe that's when you make your phone calls or you do something else that just gives you a break from that project. You will be absolutely amazed at how productive you're going to be with this particular kind of quick hit. So that's what we call the quick hits. And now we're going to get into some things on managing your calendar, and then we're going to get into some actual tools that will help you with this. So first of all, I'm going to talk about a default calendar and actually how to set up one, but don't fear white space on your calendar. You should have some white space, meaning, quote, free time, and you have to plan for interruptions. Don't let the interruptions plan your day, plan for them. So if someone sticks their head in, you don't have to say no to them, just say, hey, now isn't a good time. Can I catch up with you at this time? And if you have a couple 30-minute sessions on your calendar throughout the day, then you move those people there. You don't stop, though, if you're in the middle of something, and start the chat at that point. Always work off of a task list and a to-do list. Put them in your calendar, and the larger ones that take time, use the Pomodoro method or the technique. And by the way, I have things on my to-do list that maybe takes 5 minutes. So if all of a sudden I'm sitting here, wrap up something, and I only have 10 minutes before I have to run to a meeting, I probably have 3 tasks that I know I can get done within that time. So if you're really working off of a good to task list, and we are going to talk how to make a good task list, you can really flip into this. And then plan your calendar for the next day at the end of each day. Please try this. It's amazing how quickly you get into your day if you do that. and the takeaway here is, though, don't overstructure your calendar. Those of you, I think Betsy mentioned it, and I do this all the time. I always have way too much to do. So give yourself a little break there because you'll end up actually getting more behind by doing that. Okay, so here is what I call manage your time targets. I've got another quick hit area. And what we look at here is that not urgent but important zone, the big rocks. If you're looking at that, when we go in here, this is the area that we're talking about through here. You should be spending 25% of your time on not urgent but important zones. And I'm going to break into the, and ask you, what do you think fits into that zone? Hugh, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, what is not urgent but important zone in your mind?
Well, for me, it's continued business development. I mean, it's not going to be pressing right now, but it's an activity you have to continuously do.
Okay. It's not urgent. You don't have to do it immediately. That's what we're looking for.
Right.
Not
It's not today, but if you stop doing it altogether, it's going to bite you in the tail long term.
Okay. Okay.
So
great.
it is important.
Perfect. That's a perfect one. Okay. Let me call on someone else here. Joyce Lorish. What is not urgent but important zone for you?
Well, basically my emails, keeping up on my emails because we are a customer service-based industry.
Okay.
They are important, but not always urgent.
Okay, great. And that's a perfect example of, hey, they are urgent and I have to get to them. But you're saying they're urgent and important or not, or those that aren't important, but they're very bad. Let me rephrase that. They're not urgent. You don't have to do them immediately, but they're extremely important. So you should be planning for those.
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slide, which will break this out for you a little better. And by the way, this is Stephen Covey's time target and grid. I think all of you know who Stephen Covey is. He wrote the 7 Habits, and he also came out with the 8th Habit. But this is how he structured that time grid in a different way. So the urgent and important are crises. You have to deal with it. And by the way, depending on the job you have, you're going to have more crises in certain jobs than in others. Pressing problems, your deadline-driven projects, meetings, and preparation. Those are urgent and important, and you should have those planned for. Then the important and not urgent are preparation. This is your planning, your relationship building, your recreation, delegation, and developing your people. All of those are very important things, but generally they're not urgent. And I always, especially with a lot of my business leaders, the relationship or the developing the people piece is something they want to concentrate on, but they never get to it. And so that has to be put on your calendar, and it has to become almost a project that you prepare for. And then down below are the urgent and not important, your interruptions, your phone calls, your mail. We just talked about email, different reports. So a lot of these types of things you need to manage off. You need to be able to say no, and you need to be able to just put it off so you maybe do it during that white space you have in your calendar. And then the not important and not urgent, understand where you play. Some of this is kind of those shiny objects, the trivia, the busy work, the kind of stuff that we, you know what, this is fun to do and you're doing it, but it's really not adding to the productivity of the day. So again, if there's certain of those shiny objects that you play with a lot, put them on your calendar during a certain time, do it, and then you don't get back to it. So very, very important. This is the section that a lot of people, keep playing with, and we're going to call those, a lot of that is pebbles and in some cases sand, and you're going to learn about the jar of rocks as we go on there. So just be aware of that. Okay, so now we want to get to the next level. Out of all of those, I'm going to take a stop right here. And again, I'm going to call in a couple of you. Out of all of those ideas, which one do you think might be one that you can actually implement? So Katie, Driven or Driven, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Katie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
So which of those did you think worked for you?
I wrote down the Pomodoro technique and managing my calendar. Putting in that white space and making sure I'm actually writing out everything that I want to get done that day.
Perfect. Good. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to do that task list. So that's great. Okay. Hold on. Okay. And how about Chris Kern? Chris, what were the ones you put up there?
I love the idea of scheduling the white space as well. And just having those 30-minute sessions to be able to say to someone, now's not great, but knowing that I have that time set aside somewhere else in my day. And while I do have a task list, sometimes it gets buried, so got to pull that out and prioritize.
Yeah, your task list should be the first thing on your desk. I mean, that should be somewhere when you start the day, it's right there. And again, I use Outlook Calendar, and I print it every day. I actually print mine even though it's on my phone and everything. I still print it. I just feel like I need to see that. So keep that in mind, and we'll talk about how to even make that better. Okay, so let me get up here. And one other person that I'm going to ask. Okay, is Melissa Driving. Are you there? Melissa, are you there? Nope. Okay, Michelle Wagner.
Hello.
Hello.
I have
What did you pick?
saying not now with the interruptions. While you were going over that, two people walked in, and even though I have a sign posted webinar in progress, they still start talking to me, and I missed part of it.
I love it. Okay, that's tough. But plus that goes with the culture that you might have at the business, and you do want to have an open door. But I'm telling you, if you just nicely say, hey, not right now, but hey, could you come in at this time? You'll be amazed at how much more control you get. I don't believe they walked in, though, and started talking to you, so that's great.
One kept talking even though I'm sitting here with a headset on and everything. I was just like, oh, boy.
I love it. But also, you had your hand up. Did you have a question, or was that from before?
I think it was from before.
Okay, great. Alrighty, so now let's get into that next level that I was talking about. And what it's going to do is give you a little better idea on how to do some of these task lists and really make this kind of a very impactful, focused approach here. Okay, so here's your toolbox. We're going to talk about 5 different tools. And I saved the delegation tool for the end because this really will impact you if you have someone that you can actually delegate to. However, I will challenge all of you that even if you don't have direct reports or people reporting to you, you can find people that you can delegate to. And depending on what your DISC profile is, some of you just don't want to give up anything that's on your plate. And you are going to have to give up some things that are on your plate. But before you do that, you absolutely have to define what is on your plate. And there's a variety of ways of doing that. Sorry about this. I'm going to give you kind of 3 things that relate to defining your plate. And the first thing is just a quick overview of kind of your tasks. What are the things that you have to do? And it's really funny. I have a lot of small business owners, and I'll ask them, give me your job description and their job. I have to do everything. And especially in the small business world, and a lot of us, whether you're in a larger corporation or not, we still are wearing so many hats. So doing a quick overview of what are your key roles and responsibilities? What are you actually supposed to be doing? Because you might find out that everything is morphed kind of out of your job role and responsibility, and you might have to pull that back in. So a quick overview can help. But doing an act, so So, and this will also help in terms of that quick overview. So, okay, everyone, you're going to have to grab a piece of paper, and I'm actually going to have you write this out. So this will take you a few minutes. So get prepared. So I want you to look at how you spend your time right now. This is a real quick overview of your time. So how many hours a week on average, I know that can be different each week, do you actually spend in working? This is doing your job. So write that number down. How many hours do you spend sleeping? And this is very different for different people. I mean, some people need 9 hours of sleep, and some people say, I only need 6 hours. And some people go on 4. Write down how much on average you spend sleeping. Now, this is how many hours do you spend doing family or chores or things that you have to get done outside of work, whether that's grocery shopping, making meals, whatever. Things that have to get done as it relates to the chores, not things you like to do, but things you have to get done. And then the rest of this is hours spent on personal time. Now, this is not sitting in front of the TV watching TV, but personal time that you spend for yourself. You want to go to the gym, things where you want to do because personally, this is what you've laid out for you to get done this week, whether it's reading an article or something like that. Not just free time where you're going to sit in front of the TV or stuff like that. Personal time that you actually planned for. And then total that whole thing up and subtract that number from 168. Okay, so I'm going to the next slide. Hopefully everyone has this. Okay, so here's your poll. Poll is open, so all you have to do is click in where you fall. Okay, this is breaking out very nicely. Okay, we're still having people pull in. Okay, I think we're pretty there. Oh, this is great. Okay, so what it's evening out to is 20% of you have over 60 hours left over. 30% of you have 45 to 59 hours. 40% of you have 30 to 44 hours. And 10% of you have 15 to 29 hours. So that means that almost every one of you have at least one full day a week of unaccounted time, to some of you actually having almost 3 full days of time that you haven't accounted for. So just that quick overview, you're usually shocked when you do this. So I'm not going to say that all of that time is being wasted, but imagine you being able to manage those 60 hours or even those 15 hours that you have in a different way. So know that there isn't anyone on this call right now that doesn't have a whole lot of hours that they can maybe manage differently. And what are you doing with all of that extra time? We did all of the stuff you have to get done. So when you kind of look at that important areas, you accounted for all of your important hours. So I'm going to just call on a couple of you to just kind of get your perspective on what you thought of that. And if you don't mind sharing, that would be wonderful. Rebecca, I'm going to call on you, Rebecca Diltz. Rebecca, where did you fall?
I had over 60, which was interesting because I feel like I'm always on the go. I'm always busy.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so do you believe that?
Well, then when I sit and I think about it, like especially like downtime for, personal time, like I do try to take advantage of whatever I can.
Okay.
Even if it's
so we
at home watching the movie.
Okay, but maybe at home watching the news would fall into that personal time. But 60 hours a week isn't all going to be personal time. So that's why a lot of people, really do. They sit there and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this. Okay, I'm going to call on another person. So I think what I'm asking is start thinking about what's on your plate, what can we get off, what do we replace it with, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Sarah Petrak, I think is who. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
And where did you end up?
So I fell in that 30 to 44 range, and I think for me, talking about what is personal time versus what is just like things that are sucking your time away, I realize that I'm not budgeting a lot of personal stuff. I mean, my job involves a lot of social media, and so for me, it's really easy to get sucked down that rabbit hole. So for me, that really isn't personal time, even though I say it's personal time. So I realize that I have all this time that I'm probably spending doing that now I have available.
Okay, super. And so the personal time piece of this is so critically important, because if you schedule personal time, do the things that absolutely energize you. And even if you only do it for an hour or an hour and a half, for me, it's gardening. I schedule, you will see on my calendar, especially during the weekends and that, I have to get out and spend time doing that because it totally 100% energizes me. And I will come in and just feel fabulous. And as long as you're energized, you're going to always be a whole lot more productive. So that was the first thing, is just really getting that overview of what's on your calendar and accepting the fact that you're probably at times wasting time. The other big one that can make a huge difference, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt, but it can be done easily, is actually do a time study. And what you would do is track your time about every 15 to 30 minutes. You're going to get a downloaded sheet that it's handwritten. You can do it on your phone if you want. There's a whole lot of other time apps out there where you can start tracking your time. But actually list what you're doing. Now, you can just do this for work, or if you want, you can do it for a full day. We usually do this at work. And an example of what happened is I had an executive team I was working with. Everyone was just so flat out. And, there was this constant, we don't have time. I don't have time to work with my people. So we actually did this time study. And I'm going to talk about the floor blocker when I get there. And I'll show you how we were able to take a whole block of some of the tasks off their list. We hired a person and had them do all of these tasks, and I'll explain that. But this will become crystal clear on where you're spending your time and how you might have to change that. So you do it for 2 weeks, and then out of that, you start lumping all of your things into a task list, and then you go to what I call the 9 blocker. Now, if you look at the axes on this, we have skill at the top and importance. So you would take your tasks and actually put them in this 9 blocker based on the skill it requires and based on how important it is to your job. And you try to space it out within these 9 blocks. Now, another way you can do this, especially, my goal is to get my owners to the point where they do not have to be working in the business, that they actually have a commercially profitable enterprise or business that can work without them. So sometimes, depending on where they are, we might actually have skill and what you like to do. Just depends on kind of where you are in the process. But if you do this, you're going to be shocked at how this works out. And when you are looking at this, there are 2 key areas that I think you want to pay attention to. This area up here, high skill, high importance, those are things that you may want to consider outsourcing. Bookkeeping. Some of my smaller business owners spend so much time on bookkeeping. This is something you should only be looking at reports. Get it off your desk. It's a higher skill. Someone that does this every day is going to do it far better than you do it. I'm using that as an example. We could come up with a lot. And then down in this, low skill, low importance. A lot of times this is stuff we like to do. It doesn't require us to think much. We're good at it, and we spend our time doing that. This is all of the stuff that, again, you want to delegate and get off your plate. You start there. I say really look at these 4 areas as possible areas for delegation. So this is really important. You're going to get the time study. You're going to get the 9 blocker that will explain how to do it. These are all going to be delivered to you in downloads. So here's kind of where we were just talking about what's the impact and how do you manage this a little bit better. And this is where you start delegating. This is where you consider outsourcing. And as you see here, I put interest or importance depending on where you are in your kind of journey here. Okay, so that's really everything you need to manage your plate and get that done a little bit better. Okay, the next thing is to define your big rocks. And big rocks ultimately should result in your major goals and plans. And we're going to talk about big rocks. And I want to do a shout out here to Betsy Storibono. She gave me and she's from Kincannon Miller. And Betsy, thank you. She actually sent me, we are mentors for the women's business mentoring program. She was last time, and she knew I was doing this, so she did the time management for them last time, and she had some great slides in there, and I'm going to use some of them in here. So thanks, Betsy. Appreciate it. And so the first is the jar of rocks. These are your major priorities, and they ultimately should end up being your goals and plans. And the story behind this, again, this comes out of Stephen Covey's book, but the story behind this, and when I do this as a live seminar, I actually bring a big jar of rocks, and I have a line, and I ask everyone, is this filled to the top with rocks? And everyone says yes. And I say, can I get any more in here? And everyone says no. Then what I do is I pour in a bunch of pebbles, and I shake it, and the pebbles fill in. Then I said, now does it fill? And now they're catching on. They'll say no. I then pour in sand, and I shake it, and then I pour in water and say, okay, now this is filled to the top. But here's the issue. If we did not put those big rocks in first, and this is one of Betsy's pictures, which I love this, that is a big rock. This is a major priority. If you did not put that in first, you're never going to end up being able to ever get it in. And you're going to spend your day paying with pebbles and sand. And so my challenge to every one of you is, are you spending your day paying with those important but not urgent, or even not important and not urgent pebbles and sand? Because if you are, you will never get your big rocks in that jar if you filled it up first with pebbles and sand. And it's a great story. And think about it. How do you actually determine what those big rocks are? And I go back to this time management grid, and I go back to the very beginning and saying, what are your key roles and responsibilities in your job? Those should then fall out to be your big rocks. And I have a whole business planning process. I'm going to be honest with you. I am from a day-to-day basis, unless you are going to get money from a bank or you're going out for maybe some investment capital. I don't feel a 5-year plan is as helpful as managing on a yearly basis with goals and then 90-day plans. So generally, when I work with a business, I have you put your entire business on one page, and we do this. I do a business planning seminar at the end of the year, and everyone does a complete assessment of their year, and then we come to the planning seminar, and we lay out your goals for the year, and then we go into a 90-day plan. But I always have you do a planning board, which basically kind of captures the year that you just passed and identifies your 3 priorities through assessments and all of that. It's really cool. We had 60 people last year, and if you really follow this, it's simple, it's clear, and it doesn't take you a ton of time, but the assessment you get around it really helps you zero in on those priorities and then the financial goals. And you will be getting these as a download. And then what we do is we transfer those priorities into good, solid goals, and they're SMART goals. So I wanted to talk to you about the power of planning and written goals. But before we do that, I'm going to ask every one of you, I'm going to open the lines again, and I want some of you to just let me know, do you actually have written goals for the year and an action plan behind it? So Malcolm, I'm calling on you. Do you have actual written goals, and do you have a plan behind those written goals of how you're going to achieve them?
Well, I used to until I got short-staffed, and now that problem is resolved. So this is good inspiration to start doing that. But of course, from our previous sessions, I've certainly have the tools. So at this point, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. So we were.
But I will. That's a good.
And Malcolm usually makes it to all of the planning seminars, so I knew he wasn't there this year because he had lost some people. But that's why I wanted to check to see if he at least went back and do this. This is critical, I think, for focus. Those of you that are asking about focus, and I don't care where your job is, just what are your 2 or 3 major big rocks and goals for the year, and then we transfer those into 90-day plans. And I guarantee that you will get extreme focus if you work your planning process this way. So Chris Kern, I'm going to ask you, do you have written goals?
No, ma'am, and I desperately need them.
Okay, so again, if some of you have not gone through this process, you can use some of the sheets that you're getting. I'm also going to give you the goal sheet. Please get that. Go back, think about your big rocks. What are the things that you actually have to get done by the end of the year on an overall basis? And then you break those down into quarterly goals. It's amazing. But the reason I put this slide up here is it's been proven that the power of planning is critically important. And there was a study done, and this was actually over, I think, a 20-year period. And it was I think there was over 1,000 people in this study. Only 3% of the people had written goals and plans. And those people accounted for 90% of the wealth in this group at the end of this. I'm sorry, I should know this. I think it might have been a 25-year period. So look at that. 70% had no written or verbal goals or plans. 27% had verbal goals. 3% had written goals. That group accounted for 98% of the wealth. Now, I'm not saying that wealth is the only significant sign of success. You need to decide what is success in your mind. But imagine that 3%, 98% of them held the wealth. Do you think maybe having written goals and using those as focus made a difference? Critically important. So keep that in mind. So as I said, when you get the downloads, this might be the first place you go to get that. Here is the goal sheet that I try to give you. Again, we try to keep it very short and sweet. You normally leave a planning session with all of your goals outlined, your one-page business planning board, and then a 90-day plan for your first quarter. And then we hold 90-day planning sessions every quarter, so you can come in, update your goals, redo your action plans, and off you go. So it can be extremely powerful. We obviously look at the SMART test. Now I'm going to call in a couple people. Betsy, I'm calling on you so you can tell us what the SMART test is, because I know Betsy knows this. What's the SMART test, Betsy?
That would be that it's strategic, measurable, actionable, something in time bound. I've just forgotten my.
Okay, I'm going to see if anyone else could fill in what the R is. Beverly?
Resources.
What was that?
Resources?
Nope. I'm going to call one more person. Janine. Can you fill in what the R is? Janine? Okay, she must not be there. Okay, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let you, well, you'll get it before the end, but SMART test for goal is extremely important in terms of making sure that and S is specific, and I'm going to leave the R open for you guys to contemplate and think about. Okay, and then I will fill that in for you though. Okay, so make sure you have goals. I already asked this question of some of you, but now you actually have a chance to tell us. So on a basis here's the poll, it's going to be open. All you have to do is answer how many of you have written goals. So the poll is open. Okay, so go ahead and I want to just see how we fall out on this. Okay, so out of everyone that we have on the phone, 56% of you say you have written goals, and 44% said no, but only 86% of you voted. So that means not everyone on the phone voted. But anyway, that's good. We're a little over a half of you have written goals. So my challenge, as I said to you at the beginning, if you don't have goals, that's probably one of the actions you need to add when you get off of this. And like I said, you'll be getting some goal sheets. And by the way, you don't have to use the sheets we're giving you. These are just templates. Use the sheets that work for you. That's the most important thing, because some of the time management approaches that are out there, and by the way, you will get a complete reading, top books for reading on time management, but some of them and their approaches to me are so laborious that you almost get bogged down in that. So make sure that whatever you implement works for you, and that doesn't work for everyone. And again, it kind of goes back to what your DISC profile is. Then the next thing is you have to do a manageable task list. So here is a very manageable task list, but it's very, very different. And the task list should relate to your goals and your plans, especially if you have a 90-day plan. I just did something here like to-do list is drop 30 pounds, drive the speed limit, call Bill, plan seminar. Now, if we took that drop 30 pounds and translated that into a SMART goal, say that's your goal for the year, that would be drop 30 pounds within a 90-day period. Okay, so you're very specific, and you're putting a time bound on that. It is achievable. 90 days for 30 pounds is a little tough, so I might make that 6 months. But how that translates into a task list is not drop 30 pounds. The task list is you exercise Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for 30 minutes. You cut out, say, carbs, lower carb, fat diet. You actually go into the actual activities that will help you achieve that goal. And that's what becomes the task list. You also put daily things on there. But once you have that task list, you pull off of that as you are moving out. And remember, if you go into a 90-day plan, it does become much closer to your daily types of things. And I gave you one for each of those. Like plan the seminar, redo my PowerPoints. I had that on there in terms of prepping for this. So what is a task list? Think bite size, relates to actions that will get you to your goal. You use however you want. You can see there's a calendar there. You can see there's a phone there. And again, I suggest you use a variety of apps. There's almost every app out there that, from Google to all the apps on the iPhone, etc. Must have are the tasks you have to do, have a start date and a due date, and remember that you're looking at your big rocks. Those big rocks probably have 50 different activities related to them to achieve that goal. So make sure you're breaking down that task list, and then you can put them on over into the to-do list. Here's how to write a good task list. Everyone laughs at me, but I actually did this weekend, is clean the garage. Get the planters cleaned and planted, get boxes cut up, take to recycle, wrap up netting, organize the pegboard, organize the planter counter, sweep, and fog the garage. I know that sounds crazy, but those are all the activities for me to achieve the goal of cleaning the garage. So all I'm trying to help you understand is if you make your task so high level without the little things, I could do this. Some of these take 30 minutes to do. Some of them may take an hour. So if I'm sitting here saying, hey, I've got an hour to go, let me go out and organize that pegboard. I can get this done at various times. I don't have to do it all at one time, which becomes overwhelming, and then I never get the garage clean. So that's the idea of how to start thinking of a good task list, okay? Only one task list. Don't have 20 different lists all over the place. You should have one list that come off of the goals, and we do a bit of this at the planning session. Once you've created the list, start with the due dates and take bite-sized pieces of it to get it fine. Divide the larger task into smaller ones, and as you finish, cross it off or highlight it. Choose your environment wisely, and that should be office hours are in there, So automate if you can. That's critically important if you can put everything and it automates and put it in your calendar. Okay, so the last one is a default calendar, and I'm leaving delegation as an add-on at the end simply because a lot of you, if you don't have people to delegate, this might not be important to you, and I want you to be able to drop off. So I'll wrap up with the default calendar. So I'm going to ask, what is a default calendar? What does that look like? Let me call in someone I haven't. Virginia Ellen, what does default mean?
The default is if you don't plan anything, that's what happens.
Okay, I like that. That actually is pretty good. Not what I had in mind, but that's very good. If it's automatically what's going to happen if you don't do anything, it's going to default back to that. So excellent. Tina Montone, what do you think of as default?
Default is something that you preset, and so if you it's like a preset schedule. That's what I think of it as.
Okay. Perfectly. And that is exactly what a default calendar is. It's kind of a preset schedule that you actually lay out. It's a pre-designed value or setting. So now think of how many of you actually have your calendar as a default calendar rather than as just a calendar. A calendar has your appointments, your meetings, maybe personal dates. You might put in vacations, things when you're out of the office. But a default schedule also includes items from your calendar, but it also now puts in that white space, the time that you want to set aside for reaction time. It puts in office hours where you're going to work on those important but not urgent tasks. It's very important. Now, how you build your default calendar is really up to you. I'm going to show you how I do mine, but this is it. Put your days of the week out, 15 to 30 minute segments. A lot of my segments are broader than that, but I start at the very high level and I go to the top and I list my musts that I must do, and I actually put them in the calendar. And if you can, 50% of the must, it shouldn't be more than 50% of your calendar, because you do, and then you also have time to execute. So here's how I do my calendar. Mondays is my administrative day. I do my own coaching that day. I do all of my meetings with staff. I have my office manager meeting, and Kelly's behind the scenes here keeping me informed. She's the one that opens all the polls and all that. And I do my client follow-ups, anything that's administrative. I'll talk to my bookkeeper on that day, those types of things. Tuesday is my business development day. I also serve on some boards in that, so it's kind of the day that I set aside for meeting with new potential clients. I do all my webinars and seminars. I consider them a marketing activity to some degree. It's also a retention activity for me, because all of my seminars, my webinars, and that type of thing are generally free to my clients. Wednesdays and Thursdays are generally full client days. And then Friday is also kind of my open day, where I have my white space, or if a client has to cancel, I can move them there. So I start at the very top and kind of assign my days as certain things that I have to get done. You will have to decide that. And then what you do is another 25% of your schedule should be your important reaction times. I have those labeled as yellow times. And again, that's, emergencies pop up. It depends on your schedule. Some of you, are going to be you may need more reaction time. You may be in a more reactive job. But my goal is to help you get out of being in a reactive job and actually be in a proactive kind of mindset most of the time, which makes your life so much easier. And then the big white space is for where I put the important but not urgent things that I have to spend time on. That's where I use my Pomodoro method and that type of thing. The big chunks of projects that, oh my God, I need a 3-hour block of time. And so that's how I plan it. Now, obviously, this changes. This isn't exact, but that's how I try to manage and work through a schedule. And this is called a default schedule. And I guarantee you, if you do this, you're going to have a much better control of your time rather than just putting appointments in there. What is that open time going to be used for? And that goes back to that task list you have. Another tool is called a time block. And you put your today's activities in there, and then you actually do. I don't like this particularly, but I have some people that actually like this a lot. So these are two different tools. It's still a default tool, and you can use it. You will get both of these in your downloads. Okay, so you use it over and over again. It's a starting point, and I guarantee you this is a system. So it'll take some time for you to get used to this. It's kind of like you're breaking old habits and starting new ones, but it's a great tool. And so I like to say how to be tough, breaking those rules. It's a new kind of discipline. Nothing should stop you. That roadkill, you just went right over it. I love that picture. 21 days to introduce you to a new habit, 90 days to make you stick to it. So just do it. So I'm going to, before we go, it's very tough to break that. So the next session is delegation. We're running over, but I usually plan to end about 9:30, and then delegation is a little over for those of you. If you can stay on, that would be great. But I want to, if any of you are jumping off, after you get off the phone, and delegation will take about 5 minutes. It won't take long, maybe 7. You're going to, at the end of this, you're going to get a survey. Please give us a survey back on how this worked. You're going to rate the entire webinar. You'll also get a link to all of the tools that you can just click on, and you can download all of the tools, including the reading list. And if any of you are interested in taking the DISC profile, or I also have an emotional intelligence profile, both of those will help you understand the areas of time management you have more difficulty with. You also have the opportunity to take advantage of that. Otherwise, I'm going to keep moving, and we're going to go into delegation. Very, very tough. Delegation is a very high-level management tool, and that's what most people don't know, and most people don't understand that it's actually a skill, and it has to be learned. So my challenge to you, if you did the time study, like I said to you, with those 4 actually, it's a 5 executive team. They all did the time study. We took those 4 blocks off to the left and lower left, made up a job description, and hired a fairly high-level administrative person that could handle most of those things. And they felt like they got an enormous amount of time back. It was very important. But there was also delegating then that was involved. And delegating properly is a really, like I said, high important too. It's giving someone the responsibility and the authority to do something that's normally part of your job. And why not delegate? These are all the things I hear. And I'm going to challenge every one of you probably use this. This is total and complete rationalization. It's an excuse. It takes too long. No one on the team is capable of doing it. You want to do it right. You have to do it yourself. Your team is already overworked. I can't dump more on them. I don't have anyone to delegate to. In my mind, all of those are excuses and rationalizations. So keep that in mind. You're one of those people that just don't like to, take the time to delegate. And by the way, it does take time. So there's actually steps to delegation. And the steps are not that involved, but important. So here's the reasons why you should delegate. Freeze yourself so you can free yourself up so you can get to those important non-urgent tasks. Overall, it just frees you up really 100% if you delegate those tasks that really should not be on your desk or on your plate. And if you're really good, this is the area that you use to develop your people. This is a wonderful development tool. So if you can sit down and say, look, I need to have them learn how to do this anyways, this also becomes your development plan in many cases. Okay, so leveraging through people. The key is delegation versus abdication. Please do not abdicate and just throw the task and say, here, do this, this is now yours. That's abdication. Delegation means that you actually follow the process. So the key elements that are critical to the delegation is that you give the person real responsibility, real authority, and real accountability. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not willing to delegate. That's the toughest piece here. I've seen so many people say they're going to delegate, and the reality is what they do is they give them the task to do, but they don't give them any responsibility, authority, or accountability, and that destroys the whole delegation process. So here are the key 6 areas for delegation. Choose what to delegate. Choose the right person to delegate to. Communicate what you want done. Define steps, step by step, or use your best judgment. You can determine what makes the most sense on this. Using your best judgment means that then you're going to buy into that person might not do it the way you do it, but you trust their judgment that they'll do it well. Or you're going to actually give them a defined step-by-step process with directions on how to do the task. Going up to the first one, choose what to delegate should fit into that target that we gave you on that 9 blocker. And choose the right person to delegate to is someone that you think can do this well and would be able to focus and get it done. Then you have to give them clearly defined responsibility and authority. If you want them to make decisions around it, give them parameters in which to make the decisions. If it's a financial decision, give them levels of a financial authority. That's what normally doesn't happen in delegation. Clarify the results. Be very clear that if you're successful, this is what this looks like. If someone is given either a measurement or a clear understanding of what the end result is, I guarantee you they will work towards it. And then you have a variety of ways of following up and tracking. You can scrutinize each step. You can set a date for the work to be complete and you review it, or you can designate someone else to oversee it. So you have a variety of ways. But if you don't follow these 6 steps in the delegation process, you're going to have some major issues. So I feel that these are the 2 steps that you must get right, which will start the delegation process off very, very well. Choose what to delegate and choose the right person to delegate to who has the skill, the experience, and the personality to do that task for you. Okay? And you can use situational leadership, DISC. It's a development process. Look at everyone, and everyone is different. So be sure you're choosing the right person. So there's a delegation exercise in your download that helps you identify one responsibility you wish to delegate to someone else, and it'll take you through the steps we just went through. Hard to do on a webinar, but I really want you to think about that. So this is your last tool. It's a very high-level tool, and it requires some tools. So we're going to wrap up. I want you to write down 1 or 2 key learnings, and I'm going to call on you as we wrap this up. And any 2 actions you're going to take, and then fill out the feedback survey. Please fill that out. That's important to us. So we thank you for attending. You'll get your digital downloads under that email. There's also the DISC profile IQ assessment with a coaching hour or a coaching session if you're interested, which will zero in on the DISC and the EIQ, which again, I just did a leadership program. One of the highest levels of leadership is the self-awareness of where your weaknesses are. This will help you, and then you can overlay this on some of your time management challenges. So, Whitney, I'm going to jump in here. Are you there, Whitney?
Hello.
Whitney?
Yes.
Hello. What did you walk away with from key learnings? And you have a question mark, and I'm sorry I didn't see this earlier. Did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was trying to answer a question. The
Okay.
R, realistic.
Okay. Oh, great. She got it. We're ending with the R was realistic, so she put a question mark. Thank you, Whitney. So we're going back to the SMART goals, which is specific, manageable, and the R was the realistic. So great. What were your 2 key learnings here, and anything you definitely want to implement?
Key learnings, I think the biggest one is I've gotten far away from the rituals. So I really love the every morning, during the day, and end of the day rituals that I would really like to put into action.
Okay.
And then the 9 blocker was definitely really good for me as well. It kind of opened my eyes to, running a small business. You have a lot of team members that work laterally as well as myself. And I think it would be a good exercise for possibly reorganizing or just kind of auditing our different job descriptions within my team so that we can all have a better view of how to manage our time better and our responsibilities.
Okay, super. Those are excellent. Very good. Michelle Wagner, I'm going to be calling on you next. So I'll give you a second to kind of think about what were your key learnings and things you're going to implement. Michelle, are you there?
Yes. The Pompadour technique was interesting to me.
Okay.
I definitely don't plan for white space. It's hard. I'm in HR, so we are constantly having interruptions. So that's what I would like to get around and get more focused on.
Beautiful. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I hope every one of you are walking out of here with some really good key learnings, some new things that were presented, and some actions that you could put into place. This is a lot to cover in an hour. We were a little over an hour, but I usually leave those last 5 to 10 minutes for the delegation. So please do the survey. And we need your feedback. We really appreciate that. And then you can get the digital downloads, which will apply to this, and the recording will also be available. So thank you very much. That's the end of it. Look for some future webinars coming up, and we thank you very much. So goodbye.